Good morning, everyone. You may have noticed this is not the normal setup for my video. I stopped subscribing to my video editing software currently, so we'll be having more impromptu, less edited types of videos. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit today on something that is very much I feel time appropriate. We're in kind of a situation right now where we have high inflation, we have a crashing stock market, we have really, negative sentiment towards Congress, we have negative sentiment towards the Federal Reserve, and we have negative sentiment towards corporations. And what you kind of have to realize, and what I realize, and I hope many of you can kind of see where I'm coming from, is that everyone in the world is self-serving. Okay? Everybody is. Even myself to an extent, and as well as everyone else. I do what I do to make money. I do what I do to help people because that makes me feel good in return. Sometimes just getting social reward is rewarding in itself. But what about when a lot of your kind of reliance is on someone else? In this case, the government. What can you do, right? And I think the only thing you can do is to understand that having reliance on the government, on anyone else, is really a risk trade-off, right? Risk versus reward. Everything in life is risk versus reward. Everything is a trade, which is why I love trading, and which is why I can see things for objectively what they're worth, and I will bake in my opinions, but I fully understand that my opinions are just that. My opinions cannot change the fact. It can change the narrative and how I react or how I feel about my reaction, but it can never change the fact that everything's a trade. And the only way you can get a win-win is if somebody believes that the loss that they're having is not a loss and it's worth the reward or worth giving the risk away. Good example, life insurance, okay? Life insurance, term life insurance anyway, is incredibly cheap because statistically it is incredibly rare for someone to die that purchases term life insurance. So let's say, for example, and this is a really real example, it's my example, I pay $600, a little more, a little less, every year until I reach the age of 40. No, I was 31 when I bought it. Was I 31, 32? 52, let's just say 52. If I die anytime within those years, I will give to my beneficiaries because of my death $1 million. So $600 over 20 years is, I guess you could say, it's a lot of money. It's about $24,000. Hello, my math is incredibly weak right there. So it's about $12,000. Okay, so if I give someone $12,000 over the course of 20 years, they have to provide to my beneficiaries $1 million. Now for me, that is a great risk, me dying and having to provide my family. Remember, in the case of myself, I don't care if there is a 99.9% chance that I, like everyone else who is classified as someone in my age range, male, non-smoker, that age range even if 1 out of 1,000 will pass away during the 20-year period, if that one person that passes away is me, I would trade $12,000 over the next 20 years for $1 million trade-off if I die. That's good odds, or good risk to reward. Not good odds, good risk to reward. So I take that trade. I'm in that trade. Right? But for some people, what they do is they put all of their eggs into the Social Security basket. There is about 1 in 4 Americans, I believe, who only source of income in retirement is Social Security. Now, Social Security, the name, implies that it is a social program. A social program that provides security in the form of financial income to prevent you from going into poverty. Now, unfortunately, the way the Social Security program works, it is not an evenly distributed program. It is a entitlement program that is based on the amount of money you made while you were working and the amount of years that you paid into the system. So even if it is a social program, it is still highly based off of your individual contribution. Social Security, though, is a forced program. So we have no say on whether or not we are going to be exempt from Social Security and just not participate, or participate, right? You can't opt out of Social Security if you're working. That's just the nature of the thing, right? You can't opt out of Social Security. I mean, there's some states that have their own retirement program, like teachers in California, and before 1987, the Postal Service. So it's all encompassing. You have to join, so to speak. But knowing what we know about how the world, maybe not the world, but how Social Security is treated in Congress, and how we've found out lately that Social Security isn't properly adjusted for senior cost of living adjustments, maybe that's not the best place to put all of your eggs, right? So in my prior example about the life insurance, $12,000 for $1 million, if anything bad, if I were to die, right, over the next 20 years, is a good risk to reward for me. Is it worth it for you to just rely on one program that is shaky at best for your retirement? I don't think so. So that's a known, right? And we know that no one is going to help us. Well, we know that if we rely on the government to help us, unless you are incredibly poor, you will not get much help. That's just the way that it works. That's just the way that it goes, because that's primarily how life works. I don't know what's going on here, but something is not working right on these people who are driving vehicles. So that's kind of where, at least for me, I've come to the realization of, cannot rely on the government. And if you intend to, or if you believe you should, then you are giving the government control of your life. Because if you rely on the government for basic things like retirement, which is nowadays less and less guaranteed, rely on them for health insurance, which is a disastrous choice. But that's how it is. That's how we can't get out of it. We're in this current system. That's what this current system has. There's no way, unless you are making millions of dollars a year, to bear the entire cost of potential health risks by yourself. It's impossible in our current system. But these are all known. They're all known. Everything that I'm talking about is known. And as a individual, you should realize that those things are known. Statistics and all those things, You can throw those out the window once you have something that is statistically improbable happen to you, right? Because if you base your entire living on conforming and being the norm, that implies that nothing interesting or bad will ever happen to you. And that's just folly to me. You have to plan for yourself, and you can't by implying that you will always fall within the statistical norm is saying that you're blaming everyone else for things that you do. Like for things that you assume because that's what the government and statistics said so. You need to take action with your own life and make decisions that are going to benefit you, not benefit the norm. Okay, so I'm not saying that you should not pay your taxes or you should, not buy health insurance. But what I'm saying is you have to make plans, make efforts anyway, to see that there are some cases or some instances where the system is going to fail you. And that's just how it is. You have to make consolidations, and then you have to make proactive decisions, choices before that, right? And this economic time is just one of those things where, yeah, the system screwed up. The system that we have in America and across the whole world screwed up. They screwed up big time. And the people who weren't paying attention are paying now. They're paying the price of having too high costs and too little savings, too much risk in the stock market, and too little safety. And it didn't even play out the way that most people would have thought, because both stocks and bonds died together. Normally, if you have a portfolio, the bonds are supposed to protect when the stock market goes down. In this case, if you were in any kind of a mutual fund or ETF, or even if you held bonds, the principal value of those bonds and the value of all those funds tanked even harder than the stock market did, because we were rising interest rates make the bond value go down. That's just how it goes. If something is paying $5 today, but if I buy a new one tomorrow, it's paying me 10, then the one paying 5 is going to be worth far less than the one paying 10. Even if the face value is the same, the actual value, the real value, is less. And we feel it because the real wage growth is negative. Real interest rates are negative. Who cares if you're getting 5% on a 10-year bond if prices are rising by 9 to 10% a year, I think it's closer to 7 to 8 now, but if those things are going up by that high of a margin, then my job is only giving me a 3% raise. I'm losing money by working here, right? I'm losing the value of money. But these are all things that we know can happen, and now we've seen them happen, and some of us have experienced them happening. So this provides you with one thing that I believe everyone is missing: perspective. It's really hard to gain perspective unless you've experienced it. Many people can gain perspective by reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a documentary. You can kind of feel what other people may have felt and experienced, and then you yourself may be able to adapt or learn from it, right? But nothing beats experiencing it yourself. And for everybody who is watching this right now, remember that the feeling you have now, what happened to everyone during this entire time, during the last 3 years of, what unfortunately happened across the world, is just a reminder that if we rely too harshly on the government, look at how badly they could screw things up. And when they screw things up, it is on a worldwide or a macro scale, right? And the macro scale affects us. But we don't have to be affected by it if we know how to plan, or if we know how and what we need to survive. Now that really can conform us and make us those tinfoil hat wearers. But you have to take some of that into account, because if you rely too heavily on what the government is doing, what they're telling you, and how they're approaching things, they are the most agenda-driven people alive. Think about that now, right? Not only do they have personal biases and personal agendas and personal preservation, they also have political agendas, and then they have their donors or their supporters' agendas. So these people have the most crooked way, crooked's kind of a bad word, we'll just call it complicated way of getting to the point that they want you to buy, that you will have to untangle for potentially days, years. Right? All these scandals that come out years and years behind. So, what can you do? Well, number one is you can follow this channel. I'll be having another channel just with my name, where I'm going to just go over things that I like, tips and tricks, how to save money, how to invest. And I'm going to reserve this channel to talk more about things like Social Security, Medicare, annuities, like insurance planning type talks. And the other channel will be geared more towards our, saving money and things that I do to save money and to be healthy, etc. How to make good decisions, how to learn, how to grow, how to become more professionally, personally developed, and how to grow. But it's just interesting to me how the government has become so entangled in our life, and that's not a bad thing in some ways, but it shouldn't be the norm. Okay, when you have more than the standard, like when you have a standard deviation curve that encompasses 90% of the population, that's not good, right? That's not good, because that would imply that we're not a diverse culture, that we're not getting all that we can from all the individuals. We all think the same. That's not good. That's not how the human race has advanced. I'm not a history person. I hate history. But if you think about it, in history, we had great leaders, people with grandiose ideas, people who were willing to take risks. They were going to find a better way. Now we have everybody trying to rely on the government to find us a better way that suits everybody, and the government just can't do it. Just look at their track record. So now, more than ever, I feel it's time for individuals to be individuals, to find their individual way that they're going to do things. Forget the norm. Forget trying to do what everyone else is doing. Forget trying to be the millionaire next door, or the next Warren Buffett, or the next Elon Musk. Be the next you. You can use other people, as a blueprint, but keep in mind that you are you. If you're an entrepreneur, that's great, but first you are you. You're not an entrepreneur named so-and-so. You are so-and-so who identifies or may have some traits of an entrepreneur. Because when you start labeling people, labeling yourself, you tend to think you should act the way that the crowd does. And that's not the case. You should act the way you want to based on your values, your beliefs, and your goals. Not their goals, not their values, not their beliefs. You can adopt some, right? You want to be hardworking? Be a hard worker. But you don't have to be a part of the hardworking burnout community. Don't do that. So that is where you need to differ yourself. This is a much longer video than I thought because I got stuck in traffic. And there's some weird drivers along the way. But if you made it this far, just think about that. Okay, just think about those things. Think about how you can be less dependent on governments and government policies to see them for what they are and not how they benefit you. And that way you can look at things objectively and say, hey, this is not a good idea, guys. Even though it's going to benefit me and my age group, or maybe them and their age group, this is not a wise decision in the long term. Period. Does not matter that it helps us today if it kills us tomorrow. Right? Live another day is not how societies last. But that is how, unfortunately, they have always run. And as you know, societies always collapse. So they become too reliant on the government becomes too complacent and then too aggressive with their policy, and they end up causing an uprising. The uprising ends up overthrowing or vastly changing the government, and then we recycle it and do it over and over and over again. All right, everyone, I'll see you in the next video.